and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin. This is my co-host Teddy, and today we're going to be doing the Titanx, which is still on my rig there because it looks so good with its light up GeForce GTX, against NVIDIA's next highest graphics card. It's going to be the MSI GTX980. This is the twin Frozer Game 4G one. So this will be quite interesting to see how much of a difference there is from NVIDIA's highest of their 900 series cards against the brand new Titanx. So let's first talk about the differences. So obviously different GPUs. In the Titanx there is the big boy, the biggest NVIDIA GPU I think they've ever made in terms of its actual size. The GM200 28nm Maxwell GPU. That's obviously going up against the GM204 GPU in the 980. Now CUDA cores wise, that means that you're going to be getting 3072 CUDA cores in the Titanx and 2048 cores on the GTX 980, so quite a vast difference there. Memory wise, this is where the biggest difference is. So the Titanx comes with 12 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory at 7010 MHz on a 384-bit bus, whereas the 980 comes with 4 gigabytes of GDDR5 at the same speed, 7010 MHz, on a 256-bit memory bus. So peak memory bandwidth is actually 50% higher on the Titanx over the 980. Now the boost speeds are also different. You know, the speeds the cards are set at. GPU Boost 2.0 will automatically overclock the cards a little bit if temperatures allow. So the highest clock speeds I saw on the MSI 980 was 1303 MHz, and on the Titanx it was 1177 MHz. There's also a difference in the TDPs on these guys. So the Titanx is coming with a 250 watt TDP compared to the 165 watt TDP of the 980, and obviously that means the power requirements will be different. So the Titanx requires a 600 watt power supply, whereas the 980 requires a 450 watt power supply, although that's just what NVIDIA recommends. Now cooler wise, we'll start with the MSI. So this is obviously a non-reference cooler. This is their Twin Frozer 5 design, which means you get these Torx fans, a kind of improved fan design to increase airflow, reduce noise from air turbulence. These also will turn off when the card is below a certain temperature, which is quite cool. It also features their Super Su heat pipe technology, which just more efficiently transfers heats to these very large aluminium heat sinks on here. By comparison, the Titanx features NVIDIA's reference cooler design, so it's just a blower style with a big heat sink in the middle. That's there is a benefit obviously to blower style coolers over just non-reference open air coolers like the 980 here. So blower styles are better because they take a lot of the hot air out of the case, whereas non-reference ones like this will exhaust a lot of the air inside the case. However, they will do a better job of cooling the GPU itself. Now size-wise, so in terms of length, the Titanx is coming in at 282mm, while this MSI 980 is 279mm, so slightly longer for the Titanx. Now width-wise, so you can probably figure this one out already. The Titanx coming in 110mm wide, and the MSI 980 is 140mm wide. And height-wise, it's 43mm tall for the Titanx and 36mm tall for the 980. So without further ado, now that we've explained the differences, let's get into the benchmarks and see how much faster that Titanx is over the 980. So, where should we start? How about Heaven? It's a popular one. Heaven 4.0, this is DirectX 11, 1080p, although I will be doing some 1440p testing later, so stick around. So, Heaven 4.0, DirectX 11, everything maxed out, 1080p. The MSI GTX 980 scored 66.2 frames per second average. The Titanx scored 86.7 frames per second average, so a decent jump up there. Now Heaven again, this time in OpenGL, once again everything maxed out. The 980 scored 59.4 frames per second average, and the Titanx scored 75 frames per second average, so a bit of a difference there. Now let's get into some games, and we're going to do all of these at 1440p because that's really what you should be. You know, if you've just got a 1080p display, then the Titanx is going to be mega overkill. So I would recommend at least a minimum being the 1440p display. So Tomb Raider, this is everything maxed out without VSync, 1440p. The MSI 980, 72.2 average frames per second. The Titanx, 96.6 frames per second average. Now, Bioshock Infinite. Now, once again, everything maxed out, 1440p. The MSI 980, 85.9 frames per second average. The Titanx, 109.1 frames per second average. Wow, that's a big jump there. And finally, Shadow of Mordor. So this is quite a high requirement game. This is on the Ultra preset, 1440p. The MSI 980, 68.9 frames per second average, still a good effort. The Titanx, however, 88.6 frames per second average, so a really big jump up there. And from this, basically it's about 20-25 frames. It's about a 30% performance increase, the Titanx is over the 980 there, so a bit of a jump up. Now let's talk about temperatures. Performances and everything. What about the temps? This will matter if you're wanting to overclock, and just generally it's good to know. Obviously, this being a non-reference cooler, as I explained earlier, the temperature is going to be much better, and obviously that's true. So temperature wise, during the Unigine Valley benchmark that I did, just looking at temps, this MSI Twin Frozen or Gaming 4 G980 went up to 63 degrees Celsius at 43% fan speed. In the exact same benchmark, the Titanx went up to 84 degrees Celsius with at 48% fan speed. Now that 84 degrees Celsius, that is the temp limit from default of the Titanx. So it'll go up to that temperature and then it'll start, you know, just controlling itself to keep it at that temperature. However, if you're saying it's a bit unfair that I didn't remove that limit, I did do some of these benchmarks with the limit removed. I moved all the way up to, I believe the highest I could move it was 91 degrees. And all it really gave is about half a frame extra for the Titanx. So really it doesn't make a huge amount of difference when it's just running at its stock default clock speeds. One thing to note as well is that the Titanx reaches that 84 degree limit very, very quickly. Like you start the benchmark and it just rockets straight up there. So that's another thing to consider. I also did another temperature test. That was during the Heaven 4.0 DirectX 11 benchmark. The MSI GTX980 went to 65 degrees Celsius and the Titanx once again went to 84 degrees Celsius. So a bit of a difference there. Now let's talk about noise. So again, non-reference coolers are going to be a lot quieter. I've seen some people claim that the reference NVIDIA cooler that's like on the Titanx, or the one I have from Asus, is as loud as AMD's non-reference reference cooler for the 290X, and that is just simply not true. It is nowhere near as loud as a reference 290X. Take it from me. But as always, I'll let you judge for yourself. So here is the MSI GTX980 Gaming 4G during the Unigine Valley benchmark. And here is the Asus Titanx reference card during the exact same benchmark. So noise-wise, the Titanx is a little bit louder, but nothing really. It's nothing that's uncomfortable. It's nothing that makes too much of a racket. It's easily drowned out wearing headphones or just even turning the volume up on your speakers. It will easily drown it out. So it's nothing that bad. At idle, obviously, the MSI card makes no noise at all because these fans are turned off. But the Titanx, the fans are only spinning at, I believe, 20%. So it doesn't make it makes very, very little noise anyway. It may as well just be silent. So there's very little difference at idle as well. So in conclusion, it's hard to compare these cards and tell you which one to buy over the other because they're marketed to two completely different consumers. So the Titanx is like a luxury card. It is the fastest GPU I have ever tested. Yeah, by far. However, it's aimed at consumers that don't really care about the money. They just want the single fastest card, and they don't care how much it costs. And that's, you know, it's a luxury item, and it does that very, very well. However, when you compare it to a more value for money oriented mindset, then the 980 is more of the winner, because you, in New Zealand, you'll be paying twice as much for a Titanx as you will for a 980 like this one. And you're only going to be getting, well, not only, but you will be getting 30% extra performance. So 30% performance increase for double the price. Some people won't agree with that. So the 980 is more of a clear choice for a value for money type orientated person, like your performance per dollar. However, the Titanx, as I said, is just supposedly for, you know, the people that don't care about the money side of it. They just want the single fastest GPU, and they'll go for a guy like that. It's also going to be more future proof because of that 12 gigabytes of memory. Now, another way you could go about it is getting you know, running dual 980s, which, you know, dual 980s will drag off a Titanx. However, you've got the memory issue of, you know, the memory doesn't stack, at least right now. Maybe with DirectX 12 that will be different, but for right now the memory doesn't stack, so you'll be stuck with 4 gigabytes. Other people saying the 295X2, which has been coming down in price, that's also a viable alternative. Performance-wise, again, that will drag off the Titanx because it's a dual GPU card. But then, if you're using like SLI or dual GPU cards, you run into a bunch of issues, micro-stuttering and other issues there. So it's always better to go for a single GPU card if you can. But that's how I'm going to conclude this one. So if you just want the single fastest graphics card and you don't care about money, buy the Titanx. But if you're just your average consumer out there, especially if you're, you know, definitely just going to be gaming at 1080p and you want a card that'll play any 1080p, like 99% of the 1080p games out there at maxed out graphics, then just go for the GTX980, because the value for money wise, it is the better one to pick. And I would, as I said earlier, I would only suggest the Titanx for people that are going to be gaming at above 1080p for sure. If you're just going to be gaming 1080p, then don't get the Titanx, or at least upgrade to a 1440 monitor before you do. So that's going to round out this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've liked testing the Titanx, and hopefully we get some new cards very soon to test out. The 980 Ti especially, and of course the 300 series for AMD. So definitely subscribe if you want to catch those videos as soon as they come out. Now, I thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys next time.